Ultimate relief will come when the people responsible for this are found guilty.
City Councilman Eric Botcher reacting Monday night after the arraignments of several people in connection with two of the recent club drugging murders in Hell's Kitchen.
Unfortunately, these were not isolated incidents, and authorities have told me that they believe that this is a growing category of crime. People going out to nightlife venues and victimizing nightlife patrons.
When we look at all this stuff,
yeah,
what is your view on it, if you can? And then also, I know this is New York State, but we've been surprised before. Has there been any conversation or concerns that were brought to you, especially by your constituents, about could this affect, where we live and such?
Yeah, so first part of the question, how do I feel about the legislation, the hateful legislation recently? I mean, it's terrible. It's horrific. The fact that people can't just exist and be without threat of violence or death is unbelievable. I mean, it's unbelievable to me, and it's really shocking and terrible. Obviously, that's a known. Obviously, that's horrendous, and it's upsetting and frustrating to see that in a place like Albany, where we're not Florida, obviously, but I would consider us a safer place than Florida. And I think my position on the legislation is super clear that obviously that's bad, but I think the second part of your question is more what can we do here? Is that, So what can we do in the city of Albany? I think it's multifaceted. It's continuing to be an ally in the sense of that definition from earlier, which is obviously learning, attempting to understand, knowing you can never understand, while also advocating and speaking out. And so the last few years, I think you touched on this, were the deadliest for trans folk ever recorded ever. And especially for people of color that are also trans, all of these issues that we see in marginalized communities are heightened. And so it's not just when we say we're going to protect our most vulnerable population, we want to protect Black and brown people, we also, in that same point, need to say that we're protecting our Black trans neighbors as well. So the question, right, is how can we,
You just had to make your appearance.
Okay. The question is how do we do that? So it's constantly reaffirming your commitment and your allyship to the LGBTQ IA plus community. But it's also light education and being able to take information maybe that you learn in your own community conversations and showing that to the world. And I think that that's a big part of being an elected official, is also educating people and spreading a message, right? What are you trying to teach people? What are you trying to advocate for and show? And so that's something that I do in my practice as a legislator, but it's something that I think people could do more in other public-facing figures, to be able to say that continuing declaration of allyship while also educating others. I think it's helpful. But there's so much more too, right? It's not just that. It's not just doing those two things is gonna fix generational phobias and stigmas and triggers. But I think that by being open to proclaim your advocacy in a really public way, to be open to say like, I am an ally and this is why. These are the things that you should also know. These are the things that I've learned. This is how you can learn. This is how you can be an ally. Partnering with other organizations and like doing that type of work. I think that slowly can be able to make a difference just by getting rid of those divides that exist because of just pure ignorance, which sometimes doesn't even have to be a word that's so negative. Ignorance can mean like, I just don't know and I haven't been exposed to this concept. So educating them, be like, oh, I didn't know that. That's cool. I'm gonna think about that next time I'm in a conversation where I have to use pronouns, or I'm gonna think about that next time I wanna comment on someone's hair or specific appearance as it relates to like a secondary sex characteristic, you know?
Mm-hmm. So from a personal level, it breaks my heart. I think we've seen hate at an all-time high at one point, and I don't want to point to any one thing, but I think the allowance from some of our politicians at the highest levels reopened the door to a set of bigotry that we haven't seen in years, and it turned from race to sexuality, and people were looking to just be hateful, and a lot of them aren't looking to understand anyone, looking to know why, or to try to just learn. For me, it breaks my heart. I was at the Trans Memorial last year in Schenectady when we read off the names. And I thanked everyone for allowing me to be in that space. We didn't post it. I felt it was important to not post that moment because these are family members still. The one woman had spoke very plainly. It was her son, and she respected became her daughter as a trans, and she said it was hard for me to understand what my son had went through to make that transformation. But I ended up gaining one of my best friends in my daughter, and then someone took her away from me that didn't have the right to, because that was still my baby no matter what their choice was. It breaks my heart now to say it, because it's real. That's still someone's baby at the end of the day. Our trans community goes through so much anyway with fighting to be accepted inside their own families, let alone their own community. So when we have our local, state, federal politicians doing their damnedest to make it harder for people instead of trying to understand what needs to be done, trying to be an ally, trying to do their best to make sure that multi-billion-dollar health insurance companies actually go through the process, because I believe a person, Ash, had told me they won't even cover the mental part of it that you're supposed to go through so you can do the change, the transformation that you're trying to do to find your true self. So how can I damn somebody, because mental health therapy is expensive. For anyone who's ever had to do it, it's expensive if your insurance doesn't cover it. I know I can't afford $200, $250 a session. It's not real. It's not realistic. And I'm, I deal with just regular everyday stresses, let alone on top of it. I couldn't imagine. I know what I deal with as a black man. I couldn't imagine being a black gay man or a black trans person. And this alone tells me that we are not doing enough to support the community that needs us. When I hear it is happening here at home in Albany and we have druggings, it's a level of hate that we should never have to experience. And from a standpoint of policies, I would condemn any legislator who would support it, putting anti-LGBTQIA policies on the floor. People have enough to deal with. You need to add more barriers. You can't find something better to do with your time other than be more hateful. If you're a state legislator, and I hope they see it, if you're a state legislator and you got a perfect healthcare process in your area, please call me, because I need to see it, because we don't have it here. If you got perfect education, please call me. If you got perfect housing where you're at, I need to know what you're doing that we're all missing, that you're getting it, because there's so much more that needs to be done, and there's so many more people that we could be allies to and helping than you spitting your same hateful ass rhetoric. I'm calling that out because I need them to understand that that's all it is you are using your own personal hate to hurt and condemn people that need help. that need our love, that need our understanding, that need assistance, that want to just be their authentic self. Who the hell are you to think you are to stop them?
It's maddening, it's angering, it's confusion. Those are my first emotional responses, and it's unthinkable violence towards somebody with no basis. It's just ridiculous. Then I think logically about how our country has been moving in the last 4 years up. And that's when I said earlier the pendulum is swinging to the right. The pendulum has swung to the right, and certain politicians in our history have made it okay to hate and to show that hate through violence. And again, this is why voting is so important. I think that those individuals who are the perpetrators have always been there, and they will always be there. But they've been given a pass, so to speak, to say hateful things and to do hateful things. And it's unacceptable, and we have to stop it. There's where my hope lies, that we can stop it. And again, it's your elected officials. That's where it starts.
Caught on camera, an assault at a CVS pharmacy in Manhattan. The NYPD Hate Crimes Task Force is investigating after the suspect allegedly made anti-gay slurs. CBS News' Jenna DeAngelis is live in Midtown this noon with more. Jenna?
Chris, it happened as the victim was walking into the CVS behind me on West 34th Street and 8th Avenue. The encounter, another apparent hate crime, has a lot of people we spoke to frustrated. Surveillance video shows the suspect take a big swing and punch the 24-year-old man in the head so forcefully he fell to the ground. Police say the suspect, whose mask was down, then made anti-gay remarks.
Horrified. I have friends that are with the LGBTQ community, as am I. I'm very supportive, and that kind of hits close to home.
This man works a few blocks from the CVS near Penn Station, where this happened Saturday around 7 p.m.
I think around in this part of the city, people have to take precautions to kind of be safe. I see police presence in and around, obviously it being Penn Station and the Garden and stuff.
Since COVID last 2 years is really, really bad, and I walk really fast, especially this area, Penn Station, Herald Square area, so many homeless or drug addicts around, so definitely not safe.
Video also shows the suspect walking down the street where he appears to be yelling and even lunges at someone. The NYPD Hate Crimes Task Force is still looking for him.
I think it's terrible. I mean, I wasn't there to see if there was a comment or not, but it's very upsetting to see hate crimes all over the city right now.
Echoed by others who say there should be no room for hate in the city.
New tonight, a New York City council member's office and home vandalized. It's all apparently over Drag Story Hour at the library, where drag storytellers read books to students. Eyewitness News reporter Josh Einiger has details on what happened.
The taunting, unhinged harassment started earlier this afternoon, first at an office and later at the home of a member of the New York City Council.
Their goal was to intimidate me and others into being silent.
Councilmember Eric Botcher was targeted by a group that calls itself Gays Against Groomers. Over the weekend, galvanized by online conspiracy theories about the LGBT community, they protested outside something called the Drag Queen Story Hour, in which a person in drag reads children's books to kids at a public library. It's become a weapon in the hard right's culture wars, the latest battle right here in Chelsea.
It's a very successful and popular program around the country. Unfortunately, on the internet, there are these very dark and unhinged memes that really have convinced some of these people that children are being sexually groomed. It's a really disgusting conspiracy theory that people have latched onto, and they're really taking this way too far.
The protesters over the weekend were blocked from entering the library, but tonight, 2 of them made it as far as the lobby in Botcher's apartment building after scrawling anti-gay slurs on the sidewalk in front. They were arrested for trespassing. This is outrageous, completely outrageous, the mayor tweeted tonight. Eric, you stand up for our city every single day, and these cowardly bigots have no place here.
You being the common councilwoman of the 6th Ward, which is the gay mecca, has there been concerns brought to you, without breaking confidentiality, that was brought to you about could this possibly, come to Albany and more stuff, because it's going on all around right now?
Yeah, of course people are so scared right now. People, even though we are in New York, it's not like transphobic racists don't exist everywhere. And so people have reached out to me about like, what are we doing to protect those with a trans experience right now? So people, trans folk have reached out to me saying that they are concerned because it's happening everywhere, and what can we do to protect them? And so it goes back to continuing your allyship in a way that is making sure the spaces that I am in and the spaces that I frequent are places that people can feel safe. And so I try, this sounds so crazy, I try as much as I can to make sure that the Common Council is an inviting place, that the 6th Ward is an inviting place, and I personally haven't had to watch any of these like derogatory interactions, whether it's like on Lark Street or downtown, but I've heard of these instances happening, and so when that happens I take the appropriate steps to follow up. If a police report was filed, I make sure that I follow up with the chief, but taking an active step and having the confidence to know that if something occurs in my presence, that I feel good that I would be able to speak out about it. A piece of legislation that I think might kind of connect into this question is something that I'm working on. And so when we're talking about the Black trans experience, something I mentioned before is that people of color, especially trans people of color, experience all of these all these negative experiences at such a heightened level, heightened concentration. And so a bill that I'm working on would be to prevent firings in the city of Albany that don't have a legitimate cause, kind of like good cause eviction protections. It would require that if someone was to be fired from a job, they would have to give a legitimate reason. And so... Also
known as the fire at will.
Yeah.
That's
right.
Bullshit.
And that's not right. That's not right. And so I don't have a statistic off the top of my head, but I could imagine from the knowledge that I know and the data that I know about violence and evictions and harassment targeting, you really shouldn't be doing that, that Black trans people might be fired at a higher rate than others. And so how can we protect these neighbors in a way that makes sense and that is that is able to be protected within our city? So I'm working on that. I'm really excited. It's like kind of secret, but it'll be coming out probably in May.
You know, we've had more of our conversations about crime and violence have been about crime and violence in general, well, at least locally. But I think we do have to have those conversations. And I'm curious, I think we have to have those conversations with the LGBTQ community about what we need to do to address this, because, you know, police, of course, are an option, but we want to talk with the LGBT community and say, is that the solution? Is it a policing issue? Or maybe it isn't. Maybe people don't feel comfortable with police handling. Maybe it needs to be addressed in another way. So, I don't have the answer, but I think I'm glad, Shay, that you bring this up, because I think these are conversations that we have to have. And I'm happy to have these conversations, with Shay, if we could set, discussions up, maybe with me, other legislators, about how to address these types of issues.
You brought up, I hear the word allyship and prevention a lot, so I'm glad you actually brought that up, because one of my next questions was, when it comes to the LGBT community, we see, again, politicians at Pride, and since we see them, talking about, we are going to stand for the community, yet we don't ever see them any other time, or when they don't show up when it matters and stuff like that. What is your definition, or to you, what does allyship look like to you?
Allyship for me is standing up when no one else is around. Standing up when it's not a grandstand, there's not a camera. It's about fighting even some of my own family about their ignorance at times if they say things in an old way. It's about making sure that I'm doing the best to hear what needs to be done, not pretending like I know what it's like, not pretending that I understand the struggle or the strife, but making sure that they know that I'm here to fight for them. I'm here to work with you. I'm here to make sure that you know when you call my phone, I'm gonna pick up. If you're being discriminated against at work, you can call me. Still Vice President NAACP, it's not just about color, it's about making sure equal rights for everyone. Making sure that you know that if you feel that you are not receiving a fair education because a teacher has old bigot ways because they need to retire, that you call me and I'm here to fight for you. And I'm here to make them feel like a damn fool, not because I need Channel 6 to put me on the news, but because I know you need my help. And I'm here to do something that you may not feel comfortable doing. You may not, and it has nothing to do with your position. Maybe you're just not comfortable speaking out. Maybe you know you're not a public speaker. Maybe you're not the person that wants to be front center. Maybe you don't want to take more abuse in that moment. I'm here to be your shield if that's what you need me to be. And I'm here to be your sword if that's what you need me to be. I'm here to make sure that I can do everything in my power to, one, continuously keep learning, because I don't have all the answers and I don't want to pretend like I do. But I'm here to make sure that I have your back 100%.
How do we start the conversation and at least get some type of understanding and, and such between LGBTQ people and non-LGBTQ people about at least acceptance, inclusivity, diversity, you name it?
I think it's about coming to the table with an open heart first. I steal a line from our Lieutenant Governor, you gotta lead with love in certain situations. Because when I think about love, I think about understanding, I think about caring, I think about empathy. And that's both ways, because I need my LGBT plus community to lead with a lot of understanding for the ignorance that they're gonna face. Because unfortunately, there's some people who are so set in their old ways, they refuse to learn differently. They refuse to see differently. Those are the people that are gonna be the hardest to reach. But for the ones that wanna come to the table, that want to be an ally, that want to make sure that everyone's being treated equally, for whether they know what it's like to be discriminated against or they don't. They just know that it's wrong to discriminate against someone. I want those people to be a part of that communication. I want that our communities to be what it once was. I grew up in a community that everyone kind of knew each other. You all had each other's back. If something bad happened, you were able to run into a neighbor's house because you already knew them. It wasn't like there was that moment of fear. That's what I think of when I look at our state at some point to get to that big community. It shouldn't be fear, because a lot of bigotry and hate comes from fear. It comes from not understanding people.